Why an impenetrable city? It collapsed so quickly. The answer is inside the wall, and it will surprise you. Jericho was no ordinary city. It was a strategic point that controlled routes, water, and defense in the Jordan Valley. Its walls were built to intimidate and protect, and they gave the city the feeling of being untouchable. But today, we're going to open up this structure from the inside, see how it really worked, and understand, why did she fall so fast? The walls of Jericho were not a single unified wall, as many people imagine. They formed a system with two parallel walls, creating an internal corridor between them. This space functioned as cameras where people could move around, store materials, and reinforce defenses. It was a clever solution for increased thickness without using gigantic blocks. This architecture enhanced the feeling of strength when viewed from the outside. To an enemy looking from below, it appeared as a solid, enormous wall, impossible to climb. But on the inside, it was a calculated system. Light where it could be light, strong where it needed to be strong. It was engineering, practice, no waste. Imagine two large cabinets placed side by side, forming a corridor between them. Visually, they appear as a single, heavy, and compact block. But inside, there is empty space, passageway, movement. Jericho was the same way. Power on the outside, hollow structure on the inside. And here's where the spiritual application comes in. Sometimes our emotional defenses work in the same way. On the outside, we project strength, firmness, and protection. But inside, there is only a corridor between two fears placed side by side. If that double wall seemed impenetrable from the outside, what at the base caused the internal collapse to be so rapid? The base of the walls of Jericho was made of large stones, carefully fitted together, forming a foundation that is strong enough to withstand weight and time. This lower section supported the entire structure and prevented landslides, erosion, and cracks. That was what kept the wall firm where it really mattered. Without that foundation, nothing above would remain standing. But the top part wasn't made of stone. It was made of sun-dried clay bricks. This made the construction live faster and less expensive. Instead of lifting tons of rock to the top, they balanced strength and practicality. Thus, the wall was solid at the bottom and lighter at the top. This combination of materials explains a lot about us. The wall was functioning, and as she fell, when vibration, impact, and collapse occurred, the clay part broke first. It collapsed onto the stone base, creating a layered, falling effect. What seemed like an indivisible wall, in fact, gave way from top to bottom. Spiritual application. Our lives also need signature base. If the foundation is weak, the weight of the struggles will break everything up there. It's not the top that supports the structure, it's the foundation. The question is, what is its foundation built upon? The stone blocks of the base and the mud bricks of the top fell out, forming a natural slope. This ramp connected the outer level to the inner level of the city, as if someone had intentionally built a slope. This explains how the advancement of the people happened, fast and no climbing. Archaeology has found exactly this pattern. Heavy stones accumulated on the outer base and broken bricks lying directly above. It's the type of collapse that only happens when the upper weight loses support all at once. It wasn't a manual felling, it was a complete structural collapse. This detail eliminates the idea that they needed to climb up with ropes, ladders, or battering rams. They walked over the rubble. What was once a barrier has become ticket. The obstacle became the path. Spiritual application. Sometimes, what happens in our lives seems like destruction. But when we look again, we realize it has become an access point, a bridge, a direction. God doesn't just remove walls, He traces paths where previously there was no possibility. What collapsed may be what opened the next door. But what about those who lived within? What was it like inside those walls? In Jericho, part of the population lived inside the walls themselves. These houses were built within the space of the inner chambers, supported by the casemate structure. This reveals something important. The city. There wasn't enough space within its borders. The city walls became homes out of necessity, not for security. But this brought a contradiction. The more people who lived within the wall, the more vulnerable she became. Where there should have been only defense and stability, there were doors, roofs, wood, windows, and human wear and tear. In other words, the fortress had weak points on the inside invisible to those who only saw the outside. The wall seemed invincible, but it wasn't. The case of Rahab clearly illustrates this vulnerability. His house was on the wall, literally on the edge of the precipice. She lived close to the hustle and bustle, the surveillance, the entrances and exits of the city. But all of this also meant constant risk. Spiritual application. Sometimes we seek security where everyone says it is safe, but apparent security is not real security. We can live within the wall of reputation, image, and control, but that doesn't mean stability. True security, it's not where it seems strong, but where God sustains. If living within the walls gave a feeling of protection, why did Jericho become a prison when the gates closed? The walls didn't function on their own. The true control of the city lay with gates, where all the entering and exiting took place. It was there that decisions were made about who could enter, who could stay, who could negotiate, and who was barred. The gate was the center of power and at the same time, the most vulnerable point of a fortification. When Israel drew near Jericho, it all shut down. Nobody went in, nobody went out. The city has become a hermetic fortress, but at the same time, it turned into a prison. The entire internal strategy was limited to what was already in place. This decision created a paradox. To protect itself, Jericho shut down the flow of life, commerce, news, and renewal. The city defended itself, but it also isolated itself. And the isolation, it doesn't protect forever. It weakens from the inside. Spiritual application. When we close our hearts to avoid suffering, we also close them to heal. When we try to control everything, we end up trapped inside ourselves. Fear builds walls, but faith creates paths. Protection without opening turns loneliness, not security. But if the defense was so well planned, why didn't they see what was coming? Jericho was built at a point high and strategically calculated. From there, it was possible to see the Jordan Valley, the desert, the trade routes, and the movement of travelers. This provided time to react, plan, and monitor any approaching enemy. It was like a city observing the world from afar. Control room. This visual advantage created a feeling of superiority. Those who were up there believed they had control over everything that happened around them. They could see far ahead, assess threats, and decide when to act. The broad vision fueled the confidence in one's own defenses. But to see, it's not the same as understanding. They saw the people arriving, they saw the march, they saw the persistence, and yet they haven't changed anything. The vision didn't stir the heart, nor the strategy, nor the posture. They saw the movement, but they did not discern the meaning. Spiritual application. There are times when we see signs, warnings, changes, and yet we persist on the same path. Seeing is not a guarantee of wisdom. Observing doesn't guarantee transformation. If the heart does not change, vision is useless. So if Jericho saw everything, how did the fall happen without human intervention? The fall of Jericho did not involve battering rams, fire, or climbing. It was a siege carried out with discipline, order, and obedience to a specific instruction. For 6 days, the people marched around the city in silence, following a common rhythm. And on the 7th day, at the sound of the trumpets, there was a collective cry. That scream was not a random sound. It was the result of voices aligned, connected minds, and a shared focus. The strength wasn't in the volume, but in the unit. When everyone responded to the same command, the impact was greater than any military tool. This contrasts with Jericho, which trusted in physical structure, stone, clay, height, gates. But Israel trusted in voice that guided the pace, the rhythm and the moment. One side had a wall, the other had direction. When the order was obeyed, the wall was already doomed before it even fell. Spiritual application. Sometimes, what brings down walls is not strength, it is alignment. It's not an isolated outcry, it's I shout together. It's not insistence, it's obedience at the right time. When we walk in step with God, the impossible ceases to be impossible. And this brings us to the most important point, what really fell on Jericho. The walls of Jericho were strong, but the trust they represented was even greater. The townspeople believed that nothing could reach them because they were protected by stone, height, and position. But when we place our trust in the structure and not in God, the downfall begins. Before the fall, Jericho didn't fall from the outside in. She fell from inside out. It fell apart when security ceased to be based on faith and became based on pride. It fell when defense turned into imprisonment, when strategy turned into fear, when vision failed to produce discernment. The walls crumbled because of what was supporting them. In the heart of the city, it wasn't the shout that brought down the stone, it was obedience that revealed what was holding that stone up. It was when God entered the equation that the apparent force proved to be empty. The wall wasn't just destroyed, it was unmasked. And now the question turns to us. On what wall are we placing our trust? What are we building to appear strong, while inside we only have piled up fear? When trust shifts its focus from the rock to God, what seemed impossible becomes a reality. It begins to give way. Today, we opened the walls of Jericho. Inside, we saw the structure, the system, the logic, and the fall. Each aspect of engineering revealed not only technique, but also trust placed in the wrong place. The true strength was not in the stone, it was in God. When we rely solely on what we have built, we isolate ourselves. When we rely solely on what we see, we fail to perceive what is coming. When we rely solely on our own strength, it becomes our limit. But when we trust in God, what seemed like a wall becomes path. The evidence we saw today explains the wall fell. But the most important thing is to understand, because she fell. It wasn't about engineering or the army, it was about trust. May God help us build our foundation where nothing can crumble, on the rock that remains, in the faith that sustains, in the God who never falls. If this journey resonated with you, stay with me. The next video delves into exactly what happens when a city is pushed to its limit. Click now on How Nebuchadnezzar Sieged Jerusalem Unfolded. 9 evidences on screen. See you there.